All right. The popular pre-lunch slot. So no one's got plans after this, right? So we've heard a lot about today, obviously, some of the macro pressures on auto insurance specifically, right? And what's that doing to the marketplace, the opportunities, the risks. So what we hope to accomplish in this panel is to get a little bit more detail behind some of the substance that we talked about today. The volatility in vehicle pricing, the complexity in vehicle configuration. What does that mean for the industry, both from a claims perspective and then also from pricing and underwriting? So I'm gonna let my panelists introduce themselves real quick. So I'll pass it over to Ryan.
Great, thank you, Marcus. My name is Ryan Mandel. I'm the VP of Strategy and Market Intelligence for Mitchell International. We are a software and services provider to the collision repair and auto insurance industries. And I think I have the funnest job at the company because I get to work with all of our North American clients, really just helping them understand the trends that are impacting their businesses and helping to drive more optimized performance inside their organizations.
Okay, I'm Kathy Noble. I'm with JD Power. Have been there for 30 years or so. Started really young. So my passion is the automotive data. So I've been in the industry for 30 years, focused on the automotive data, and get to create products with it. So lots of fun.
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Austin. I am with JD Power here also. I am the Vice President of Data Strategy. Kathy has quite a longer tenure than I do. I have started as an employee about 3 years ago, and I actually founded a company that competed against JD Power and was purchased and folded into the family here.
We took you right off the map by acquiring you, right?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Well, before we get started, I do need to give Ryan an unsanctioned JD Power award for hustle and effort. He had multiple travel delays to get here, so Keith, apologies in advance. I am giving a trophy away. Just don't tell marketing, but yes, thank you for making it, and I think it's going to be a great conversation. Our prior pieces, both Debbie's presentation on the impact of the vehicle complexity on claims, and certainly getting into the JD Power data on vehicle pricing, and both from a new car perspective and used car, the chaos that's really unfolded 2020 till now, and the volatility that's created to the industry. So we're going to start with what's broken, because there's a lot of what's broken. So we're going to start. Kathy, I'm going to ask you for your perspective. What are you seeing from a acquisition underwriting perspective? The questions you're getting from clients day and night asking for help.
Yeah, it's definitely the world has changed in the automotive industry for sure. One of the challenges that we have today is the amount of vehicles on the road. The OEMs are trying to build all these EV vehicles, but they're not reducing all of their gas vehicles. So you basically have double the vehicles on the road. So you've got more vehicles on the road, and then you get more complex vehicles on the road, which, as an F-150, for example, can have 44 trims. So it's crazy the amount, and then the EVs on top of that, the amount of trims that the OEMs are making. So you get the amount of vehicles and the amount of configurations, and then the complexities of those vehicles. So the challenge is knowing exactly what's on those cars and trucks going down the road. Being able to know from a 17-character VIN, basically, the birth certificate of the vehicle, what exactly is on those vehicles, as opposed to just decoding at a potentially trim level or a model level, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, what we see, because Mitchell operates primarily in the claims space, is that level of complexity that exists in the automotive industry really has ripple effects when the vehicle's involved in an accident. And so you start to see that complexity play out when you're trying to determine what are the operations, what are the actual repair procedures for a specific vehicle, because it changes depending on its configuration. It depends on what kind of packages are equipped on that vehicle to determine what kind of repair procedures and how you actually go about repairing that vehicle safely and properly. In addition, when you're talking about total loss, all these different configurations change the value pretty dramatically. They change the value dramatically, and not understanding the clarity of how that vehicle is configured means that you could be offering up an inaccurate settlement to a consumer when their vehicle is involved in a total loss. And so that's kind of how it plays out from a cost perspective. But even if you take a step back and look at from an underwriting standpoint, you have to know all this stuff before that vehicle is involved in a claim. You can't wait till it's involved in a claim to start diving into what's on this vehicle, because now you haven't priced risk appropriately, understanding what does the financial exposure look like, understanding, depending on the safety configurations and all the ADAS packages, there's potentially different levels of frequency that vehicle can be involved in. If it has auto emergency braking or if it doesn't, that makes a change in terms of what is the likelihood that vehicle is involved in an accident, but it also changes what is the cost of repairing that vehicle with that technology. So there's really many different pieces in terms of the underwriting and claims life cycle to where this level of complexity really comes into play.
Yeah. I thought I'd start off with a couple of statistics about J.D. Power's VIN data and the amount of decodes that we do. Last year, we did 8 billion decodes in the automotive industry. That's including insurance. And in the insurance market, we do about 20 million every month just for insurance. And that is getting down to those vehicles' very specific configurations, including how the vehicle was built out, all of the features that are in that vehicle. And I get in that a little bit more in a second. But a couple more statistics are 70 to 80% of all vehicles being manufactured right now have some sort of ADAS component on it. And of the 80%, 50% of those are configurable, which means that you need that 17-digit VIN code to be able to understand what you're underwriting and insuring, and also all of the downstream processes later. So really, vehicles have evolved from just being a shell, where the shell has the value, to all of the features and components and electronics packages on that vehicle being what is truly valued right now. And I thought Sean McGinnis gave a great quote earlier about asking the right questions. And having all of that information about that vehicle means that you can ask the right questions as a follow-on, as opposed to just starting with a blank slate, i.e., what are you insuring? Is it a pickup truck or is it a sedan? Does it have all these features? Where if you have all of the VIN data back-ended, all of that is already filled out for you, and it's already a known quantity moving into quoting and all of the downstream processes. And I thought I'd just take a quick little moment here and give a little infomercial about J.D. Power's data capabilities and what that really means. So we have researchers of about 100 people that do nothing but interrogate the option codes, the ordering sheets, the features with all of our OEM partnerships, and we have a common language of all of the vehicle's capabilities. So a lane keeping assist is a lane keeping assist no matter what the OEMs call it, because they all call it something different. And I don't know if anybody here in this room could read a OEM's marketing material and truly understand at what level the lane keeping assist based on OEM data. So we take all of that information and we normalize it. We put it into a common language. So downstream consumers of that can treat each one of those components the same across all of the OEMs and all of the different vehicle types. So if you expect a sunroof, it's a sunroof. Lane keeping assist is lane keeping assist. And it really removes all of the ambiguity that all of the OEMs insert into the complex configurations of vehicles. So our goal is really making it easy so all of our data partners can consume our data and make intelligent decisions on that.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And I think that kind of, it fits where we are today. Historically, vehicle data, vehicle values, it was a downstream data element for claims handling. With the world radically changing, and we see, as Steve mentioned, about 53% of consumers out there actively shopping for auto insurance, the new battlefield is moment of quote. How precise can you be at moment of quote to have an underwriting product that can be profitable once you win that customer? And now you use AI and large data. If you can capture that information at policy inception, the ability to use that through the customer journey and the life cycle to pre-populate things that will come down through personalized reviews, coverage reviews, looking at the claim. When the claim happens, the inevitable F&OL process, how much can you pre-populate? You'll know if that vehicle needs to be towed before the consumer even gets on the phone to talk to somebody. So the amount of information available and to be able to monetize that and operationalize it, we're really seeing all the activity start at that moment of quote. Every carrier we work with, which we're very fortunate to work with the vast majority of the industry, they say two things that are important to them. And it's usually 60-40, 50-50, but it's profitable growth and strategic retention, right? Everyone wants that unicorn customer, bundled customer, and they want to to be able to make a profit off of that customer. So if you're not creating these data sets and leveraging these data sets, you're at a disadvantage as the consumer's out there getting their 3.5 quotes as they're actively shopping. So how do you play offense in this market and mitigate some of the downstream effects? So I think that's what's going to be interesting here, is kind of talk about the downstream effects, because you're living it day in and day out, dealing with the shops. The total loss experience is becoming a huge quagmire for the industry. It's a defection, catalyst. Mm-hmm. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So number one, I think when you look at that profit and growth standpoint, if an insurer is operating the same way from an underwriting perspective that they did 10 years ago, that's not going to be effective. I mean, just relying purely on symbol data it's antiquated. And when we look at just the amount of change from one model year to the next in the cost of repair, it is significant when you actually see a body style change. When you go from one generation of vehicle to the next, like for instance, we looked at a 2017 Camry versus a 2018 Camry, and if you actually look at the cost of repair for the 2018 Camry, it's about 30% more than the 17, because so much changed with that new model year vehicle. Most insurance carriers, when that vehicle was a couple years old, were pricing policies identical to the 2017, even though there's a drastically different cost ratio that's involved. Now, you're right, when you bring up total loss, one of the interesting things is that when we were talking earlier about kind of the catalyst for shopping around, and shopping for insurance companies, for your different insurance companies at an all-time high right now. Well, the catalyst oftentimes is a pending vehicle transaction. If you're buying a vehicle, or if you're replacing a vehicle. So right now, total loss frequency is at an all-time high. I mean, we're nearing 25% of claims result in a total loss. And so that's a catalyst right there. That means that you are going to be replacing a vehicle. And so, especially if you're not very satisfied with the settlement value that your insurance company gave you, now you essentially just threw fire on that situation. So a catalyst already existed, now you made it worse by not having accurate data that's going to give you the accurate settlement value. So really there's a lot of stress and a lot of hurdles to clear in the total loss situation right now.
Yeah, and I think just to jump in for a second, so another commercial for the Sullivan Conference, great conference 2 weeks ago. We had a gentleman from Caliber just talking about, because of the stresses on total loss, the significant increase they're seeing in consumers financing their deductibles, right? So we're in this environment where rate activity was spiked for auto insurance. So you've got consumers making choice out there to save a little bit on their monthly premiums by taking larger deductibles. Now you're stacking the deck and having this negative experience where their vehicle values are divergent from when they acquired that vehicle at total of loss, and then they're sitting there with this hefty deductible that they have to finance. One of the risks that we were just talking about and seeing with the proliferation of the ADAS features is, and Mark will touch on this later in some of the claims data, we're seeing folks not filing a claim, not getting a repair. So what does that mean when I've got an ADAS that's not repaired, and I have a sensor off that's not calibrated? Now you've got this asset on the road, not fully repaired to OEM standards or calibrated and configured. I think, Ryan, you're saying is like 40% out there potential exposure. Think what that does on your books, right? So you have all of this information, and unless you're, again, capturing that, cataloging it, and utilizing it, these are blind spots that at some point in time will show up. Unfortunately, it'll lead to either a financial loss, a customer loss, a lot of downstream ramifications. But Kathy, maybe you can speak to kind of what you're seeing in some of the use cases. And
yeah, for sure. Definitely on the ADAS side, on the repair side. So we not only work with the carriers, but we work with the repair industry. So a good example is the windshield replacement companies, for example. We're just showing a slide here of all the hidden features of a vehicle. So this is an example of ADAS features, right? So you potentially could ask your person coming for a quote, if they have these features on the car, they might not know it because they're essentially hidden. So in the repair industry, we work with windshield replacement companies, for example. So 20 years ago, you could get a $300 windshield replaced. Today, that doesn't exist. Today, it's a $3,000 windshield. So when the windshield company goes out to quote on your vehicle, for example, they have to make sure they've got all the right parts and pieces. What sensors are hanging off the windshield? Cameras, third visor frit, like all of those fun stuff that that normal people don't think of, but we track them in our data, right? But it's all that adds to the cost of the windshield. So when the windshield company gives the customer the quote and they claim it through their insurance, that quote's accurate the first time. And they don't have to go back and forth, which just is a bad customer experience as well. So that's definitely one of the challenges that we see with the hidden ADAS features.
You know, Kathy, if I was surveyed on all the ADAS features on my vehicle, I don't think I could fill it out correctly.
No.
I know
And
I
I'm
fit
in
because
the
my cars
industry.
are all 12 years old, so they have 0. So it's great.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned deductibles and ADAS and the risk of these vehicles that are not getting repaired. You know, when we look at deductible data, I mean, we see that the average deductible is up almost 28% in the last 5 years on average. So that tells me that people are making different decisions about their policies. We hear from a lot of the MSOs that they're seeing a lot of customer pay work that's coming through the door, and that's a very different dynamic. And so you're absolutely right. When you think about what that does, it creates additional risk, because if those sensors, these systems are very sensitive, and so if those are disrupted and they're not operating properly, I mean, just a 1 degree difference in a millimeter wave radar sensor creates potentially catastrophic inaccuracies down road. And when we looked at some of that data that was showed earlier about rising, the costs, rising monthly payments and longer loan terms, that's showing me that people are under continual financial stress. So this idea that people are going to reduce their deductibles anytime soon is probably a much longer runway. And so this is going to be something that we're going to be dealing with for some time.
Yeah, I think to that end too, we just saw, right, the forecast for new vehicle sales. We got people coming off lease, more new cars hitting the market. Last year alone, over 600,000 vehicle configurations were in those new cars. So 600,000 snowflakes, right, to understand what's exactly on that car, installed, active, passive. That's just going to continue to proliferate. So I think that's where we see, this is a huge risk for the auto insurance industry. And I think given the current environment with AI and using large data sets, normalized large data sets, it's how can you go on the offensive to ensure, again, you're going to have profitable growth and you won't be having the leakage on the back end. So maybe, Kathy, you can talk about maybe another use case not related to the actual repair process or a total loss.
Sure. So I guess knowing your ADAS features on your vehicles, or the policies that the policies that you're writing and the ADAS features that are on those vehicles, and minimizing your risk on those. So there's a great example. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the Hyundai Kia class action lawsuit. Engine immobilizers. Using the 17-character VIN, the data shows, and there are certain years where it was a little messy for Hyundai Kia, but the data shows there were some trim levels where it was not available at all. There were the next trim levels up where it became an optional feature, and then the next trim levels up where it was standard. So it's that fuzzy area where it was not available to the optional, which would be clarified with that 17-character build data record, where you could tell exactly what was on that vehicle so you would know the risk. And even today, I guess they're still on the road because Hyundai Kia hasn't fixed all of those vehicles. But that's a good example in the insurance industry, reducing the risk, knowing those ADAS features that are on your vehicles.
Well, and doing so means, again, that you're just going to create all the accuracy downstream, because the ADAS, the presence of the advanced configurable ADAS, does not necessarily mean that, let's say if the vehicle is totaled, you would expect, well, if it has more advanced configurations, I'm probably going to get more salvage return for that vehicle. Mm-hmm. That's actually not the case. We actually don't see a lot of deviation in terms of salvage returns based on configuration, because of the fact that there's not as much value that's created in end of life from those features. The fact is, when you have auto recyclers that are buying these vehicles, there's no use for those ADAS components. There's no value in them. They're not being sold. They're not being reused in the industry yet. They're still extremely nascent in terms of having a second life in an aftermarket type setting. So you really have to maximize the accuracy up front to make sure that you're paying an accurate amount, that you're underwriting that risk appropriately, because that all goes into the profitability, and you can't recuperate a lot of that when that vehicle reaches end of life.
So that kind of goes back to valuing your vehicle properly at the used market from a starting at MSRP versus an as-built, and then the appropriate depreciation.
Yeah, I was just thinking of another potential use case of using the 17-digit VIN was all of those vehicles manufactured during COVID era, where they were de-featuring some of these vehicles, and some of those de-featuring vehicles were ADAS features because of the chip supply shortage. And without the 17-digit as-built information, you're still blind to that, whether that was decontented or not on the vehicle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great point. So knowing that these are all the boogeymen, right, that keep us all up at night as practitioners, what are some of the things that the industry can do, and where are we going?
Well, I think I can take a stab at that. I think the industry can number one, look to non-traditional data sources, and whether that's JD Power, whether that's an information provider like a company like Mitchell, but looking at ways to price risk. Creatively is the wrong word, but to just get out of the arcane ways that we've always done things, and to challenge your organization to say, well, how do we better understand what is the risk here? What is the profit potential? What is the total addressable market that we're after? And I think you're seeing the companies that are successful right now in the auto insurance space are the ones that are doing that and are taking a more non-traditional underwriting model and putting it into use. So there's a number of different ways to look at that, but I think that is going to be the key differentiator, because, when you look at what you see on the screen here, this is not going to go backwards. So you're not going to see less features on vehicles anytime soon. We're only moving further and further down the road towards autonomy, and we're going to have the next 20 years where we have a growing VIO, vehicles in operation, more vehicles in operation with more advanced features before we get to kind of this, event horizon where autonomy starts to take over. But that's still a couple of decades away from happening. So we have a long time where we have to understand this more accurately and be able to price this risk more succinctly.
Yeah, I think we're in this state of hyper-personalization, right? You've got that from the experiential perspective in catering to customer expectations. Certainly carriers now are looking at that at the risk profile, looking at the asset, looking at the car. We've heard looking at the environmental level, so the driving patterns, where these cars are going from point A to point B, where are they garaged at. All of this information, that's going to be the recipe for winning in this new zero-sum game, right? How hyper-focused can you be and diligent at point of acquisition to capture that customer at that moment, retain that customer at renewal, and then set yourself up and your claims team up to deliver on that promise when they have that eventual claim. Like Kathleen?
Yeah, and Ryan, just to expand on what you were saying about a couple decades away from being autonomous driving for sure, but we have time to pivot to more of the vehicle features and less of the driver, right? So really understanding the car, the vehicles
That's right.
on the road, and less about the driver.
Because there will be a time that comes when the liability shifts.
Yes.
And that's going to change the coverage model very dramatically when you start to say, well, at what point is the vehicle liable for a wrong decision as opposed to driver behavior? So you're right, we do have a period of time when you can gradually get used to that, but organizations have to be intentional about doing it.
Right, I agree. Yeah, so it's just again what Ryan was saying, like a lot of the vehicles going up in price, a lot of the ADAS features becoming more complex, the vehicles becoming more complex, the technology is just going to continue to grow. Not going to be able to keep up with it for sure. But,
yeah, and I know the next kind of emerging need for the marketplace is that connected car data, right?
Right.
And that's kind of the missing ingredient right now, and certainly the OEMs were all in at one point and then retrenched, right, based on some press and some exposure
Missteps.
there. But again, at the AIR conference, we had a great presentation from Toyota, right? It fully feels like the OEMs are coming into this space. They're intending to get a piece of those monthly premiums that the insurers are collecting, whether that's via subscription to connected car data. But that's just going to be another layer of data available to differentiate in a super competitive marketplace, right? I know we've chased that golden goose. We continue to make strides there. But future forward, what other data sets would be appealing? What other risks should carriers be thinking about?
That's the connected car is definitely one of them. We want to start getting into like geolocate information. That would be great. Like you were mentioning, you say your car is parked in a secured parking garage in, I don't know, Michigan all the time, but yet we find you in California for 8 months of the year. That kind of data would be extremely beneficial. Like we talked about the ADAS features, the connected car, we'd love to get into, did the driver turn this off? What features were turned off at the time of an accident? Does that feature recycle on engine restart? So, and again, we just need the OEMs to cooperate with us a little bit more on that, but yeah, those are a few pieces that we're gonna get into.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting opportunities for the insurance market in the next several years as ADAS becomes more ubiquitous or is more ubiquitous today. When you look at ways to improve the affordability of insurance for consumers, ADAS actually offers some of those. I mean, you could even say, is there some sort of a policy benefit? Can we offer you some sort of a discount if you're getting some sort of preventive calibration at some point, to make sure that your sensors are working the way they're supposed to be. So again, I think there has to be some level of creativity in terms of addressing some of the needs that are out there in the market, because I think they're there. And you brought up retention. I think retention is more critical now than ever, simply because of that shopping behavior that is being observed by J.D. Power and by others, and sometimes that gets just back to fundamentals, and accuracy is a big part of it. If you set the right expectations around how long it's going to take to repair a vehicle, what is the process going to look like, what is your settlement amount going to look like, when you meet all those expectations or exceed them, I mean, that's a really good experience. So then I'm not incentivized to want to go somewhere else, because there's risk for me in knowing that, well, hey, my next experience may not be this good. So I think doubling down on some of those customer experience aspects is really valuable right now.
Yeah, I think the last group just touched on it too. The sheer amount of access to data. Maybe I have a groundhog in my sport coat here, but the sheer access of data that's available to the consumer, right? So, you have to think about the new world we're in, where if I'm gonna make that first notice of loss call, there's a strong chance that consumer did some research prior to making that call. And now you start to think about things like, when I get that total loss offer, and they're going and getting hyper-personalized competitive comparisons to their vehicle, if you're not using, again, that level of detailed, rich data, the amount of negotiation time, the wasted time, the increase to cycle time, again, all the downstream effects of having either incomplete data or inaccurate data, it just prolongs a pretty difficult experience in total loss.
And you run into delays when it comes to repairing that vehicle.
Yep.
I mean, you mentioned 44 different configurations of the F-150. I mean, gosh, I remember running a body shop, and when we got an F-150, and God forbid it needed a new frame, because it was so hard to determine which frame it needed. Right. And so if you order the wrong part, now you're setting yourself up for a delay. And that completely ruins that consumer experience. So not only the fact that you could possibly repair the vehicle wrong. So a lot of different ripple effects that are caused by the lack of that accurate data.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're living in a world where this isn't a nice to have. It's a necessity to maintain profitability, retention, to maintain that customer relationship. So it's here, it's not going anywhere. We even see OEMs that are more traditional in their make, model, trim packages, like a Hyundai as an example, starting to get into that customer choice. I think their new 2027s are gonna have 6 or 7 different iterations at the make, model, trim. So all the carriers all the OEM partners are moving into this direction. They're chasing higher dollar vehicles, right? So they're gonna be putting more stuff in the vehicles, more packages to drive that as-built MSRP, which is radically different than the window sticker pricing. So yeah, this is a great way just to kind of leave you as you go to these sessions in the afternoon with retention, acquisition, and claims, to think through, this data exists today. At least through J.D. Power's lens, the insurance industry is consuming 20 million 17-digit VIN codes a month. We just see that continuing to accelerate as the market share for these vehicles continues to increase. So just ask yourselves and challenge your colleagues internally, how are we using this data? Are we already leveraging it? Are we flat-footed? Are we experimenting with it? Because again, this is gonna be a necessity moving forward. So little brain dump before lunch. Really appreciate the time. We're right on time. We're not going to take any questions, but we will sit on stage if you want to grab us prior to you go getting lunch, and happy to chat, but just appreciate the time and the dialogue. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, team.